Hello, Mike Waller, Britannia Motorcycles here, continuing with our trials bike build. Today we're going to finish off the mountings for this aluminium seat pan and also make the saddle that goes on the top. But before we get to that, I'd like to thank all the people who've subscribed to the channel. We're now over the ton in motorcycling terms, or we've passed our century if you're a cricket fan. We've got over 100 people and several thousand views, 5,000 odd, so we've got a lot of people who are interested, so thank you very much for that. What I'd like to ask you to do, if you would be so good, is to make some comments, because when I was doing this last time it struck me how long the video got to be for what was a relatively simple job. So what I'd like you to do is let me know, do you actually like me doing all the little bits, or would you like me just to more show what is being done in stages? So a couple of suggestions on that would be greatly received. I'd also like to thank a couple of people. I'd like to thank Dave Richards, who lives just down the road from me. He has a channel, Old Time Steam Workshop, which is fascinating. He has a wonderful old machine shop, all run by Belt from line shafts with an actual steam engine. And Dave was gracious enough to give me a mention on his channel, which has thousands of subscriptions, a while ago, and mine jumped up, so thank you very much for that, Dave. I'd also like to thank Charlie Prescott. Now if you're interested in BSA singles, you really should go and view his page, Otter Trials Bikes, or Otter BSAs. If you just do a search for Otter BSA, you'll come across his web page, and he has a lot of stuff about British trials bikes in general, but most particularly in BSA trials bikes, and even more particularly than that, in the Otter framed ones. Otter frames now made by Faber. So really interesting, well worth the look, and thank you very much for you two guys. So as I say, let's get on and do some more work on this bike. So the first thing we're going to do is make the little rubber trim to go along the edge where it butts up to the mudguard. You can buy sort of channel stuff that goes on, but I honestly don't like it. What I prefer to do is just get some suitably sized rubber tubing and put a split in it. To do that, the easiest way I've found is to have a really sharp Stanley knife, new blade. It's important to have the point on the end. You know, when you use a Stanley knife they tend to round off a little bit, so because you want to be able to puncture it and do a good straight cut. So I always clamp one end down and pull it tight, then punch into it, and with your finger as a guide, just go along, keeping the slit right on the top. If you don't stretch it out tight and do it like this, the slit tends to end up as a spiral. I suppose I should have measured this first, but I think that'll be long enough. That off there. See how far this goes along here. Slot really disappears completely once you let it close up. There it is. So let's find out where the end is. She's there. Bring in our seat pan. Oh yes, lots. Good. Now when you do this finally, you can put a little bit of glue in here as well. Basically just open the slot. Come on now. Now one thing you have got to be a little careful of is that. Be careful you don't pull it along as you're doing it, and don't stretch it out. You tend to that tends to happen because you're pulling it to get it in, But if you get it to stretch, then of course it'll just pop off. So there we go. Trim that nice and square. And then we have our little trim, which gives you a seal on the mudguard, but I don't really think that's as much importance as it just looks quite nice. If you wanted, you could make it go right round, but unless you actually put a curve here, it's going to be difficult unless you do it in two pieces and make little mitered cuts and all the rest of it. But just having it on like that, I think just makes a nice little job. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is make the brackets on the frame to hold this on. Now, I want to cover something on that. I've already made two little brackets, although I haven't actually drilled them yet. So what I'm going to do is bring you in a little closer, and I want to go over the reason why I always put a little turn on the end of my brackets. So let me zoom in and we'll go over that. Now, as I mentioned, I always like to put a little turn on where I'm going to mount it, and I thought I'd just explain my reasoning for that. If anybody thinks I'm wrong, they can let me know. But when we make an ordinary butt joint, we have the ability, particularly with our bronze, to build up nicely on both sides and make it a good strong joint. It won't do that. But if you're doing it on tubing, of course, you don't have this coming out here, so your joint, your bronze, or even your weld, if you're welding it, is only going to be there, and obviously from side to side there's a lot less strength, and particularly if you've got this bracket with something heavy on that can get itself into a nice little resonance on one particular engine RPM and start to vibrate, it'll fracture. But if you put a little foot on like that, then you have the whole of this here, so you have a nice big piece which you can bronze to the tube, and also you fill that in, and that gives you a lot more rigidity, and it's a lot less prone to vibration breakages, or so I've found over the years anyway. So that's the way we're going to do these. So let's set to, and I'll show you how to get them positioned. So we have our pan in place. I put a couple of heavy weights on the top because you want it to be exactly right where you want it. Pressed down, you don't want to drill the holes and then when you put it on you find there's a gap somewhere. So here it is. I've made sure the sides were tweaked in a little bit so it's gripping these tubes nicely weighed down. So the first thing we're going to do is mark off where we want to put the hole. I'm going to use these nice button head things, so you want it so it's going to look good. Then, see if I can do this left-handed, we drill, in this instance, a 1/4 inch hole. Fingers out the way. Now then, the next thing we do is we take our little bracket and we put it on so we can see it nicely, how it's going to be pressed up against there. Always difficult. Right, so I've got it nicely pressed up against the tube on the back side, about centered. And we mark that. Doing it this way takes out all the guesswork of you know, putting it in and not being able to get things exactly right. So we'll drill a hole in this and then we'll be able to bolt it to that, and that'll hold it in place while we bronze it on the back side. So let me just drill a hole and then we'll come back to this. Alright, so here you can see that I've bolted the bracket on. So you'll see there's a nut there, and there's the bracket, and the bracket's up against the tube. So what we're going to do is going to bronze this in place. What I'm also going to do, as I mentioned before, with fiddly mountings like this, I don't like to have to reach up behind and put a nut in. So the nut that's on there, I'm also going to bronze that onto the bracket, and then we have a nice captive nut, so we can just put a bolt through from the outside and don't have to worry about lots of fiddly nuts and washers and stuff like that. So let me put our green filter on the lens, and then we'll start again. Right, this is going to be a little awkward, trying to bronze and let you see, but we'll do our best. So here goes. Actually taking there. Yeah, I think so. So with that tacked in place, we will do the same with the nut. Okay. Obviously we'll just do the same on this other side, but let me take this all off, get the green screen off, and then we can move on to the next stage. So, quick look at the finished bracket, bronzed on, nut on the back of here, so that now we'll just pop that on. Kiss of death, you people watching me when I put a bolt in, isn't it? There we go. With one on the other side, all nicely fastened on. Very good. Alright, now we need a saddle for the top of it. Right, for the saddle itself, we're going to use some very easily obtained materials. For the base, we wanted something that we can work with. It's going to be impervious to the weather. So what I found is perfect are these kitchen cutting boards. They're easy enough to saw, to shape, but it's really dense material so that you can drill it and actually tap a thread in to fasten it to the seat base. But also it's dense enough to staple to, so it makes a perfect base for this saddle. Now for the form, you know, ordinary forms just squash down and after a very short time they're just no use whatsoever. So what you need is a dense form. Old seats used to be made out of a thing called sawbore rubber, which I don't know if you can buy sawbore rubber anymore, but what I discovered was these foam garden kneeling pads. First one I stole off my wife, after that I had to buy them myself. But again, it's a really dense foam. It's nice and comfortable, it's a good cushion, but the thing is it doesn't just compress and go to a thin sheet. Again, it's nice and easy to cut with a Stanley knife, easy to form, so this is what we're going to use. Then we're going to cover it with your good old vinyl, what we would call leather cloth when I was younger, much younger, but now it's just sold as vinyl. So, first thing we're going to do is mark out how big we want our seat base to be. So what we're going to do is mark the back end of the curve in about the centre, because that's as far as we want it to go. Then I'm going to mark out where the base is bent, like such. Then we're going to find ourselves a ruler, which I'm being very tidy minded and have actually put away. Unusual for me. There you go. And we're going to mark that out. Whoops, this stuff's slippery. Now then, we're going to want to have a curve at the back end here and another curve here. The reason I put curves in and don't make it really clever and follow all of this is because curves are much easier to upholster. If you're going to put anything difficult in, even squares here, you're going to have little tucks and it's best to stitch it and so on. And hey, I'm an engineering mechanic type thing. Actually, I tell a lie, I'm a chemist, but never mind. So that type of upholstery is just a little too much for me, and I do like to do everything. And they turn out very nicely with the curves because you can really fit it tightly across there. So the next thing we want to do then is decide on our curve. Now we can actually just draw it freehand, because if we once we've cut it out, we can always trim it up a little bit. So I'm going to cut this with a jigsaw. So as I was saying earlier, I don't know whether you want to watch me doing this, but I'm going to film me doing it and then you can say, well, that was a waste of time. So let me switch off. Here we go, all the excitement of the fair. So I think we'll just do this over the edge. And there we go. Now we can just round off the bits we're not quite right with, cut them to shape, and the next thing is to fit it to the base. We'll drill it and tap it. So let's go and do that. Now we have our base cut out, and actually for shaping I use one of these Stanley surf forms. Stuff must be really similar sort of density and everything as wood. There we go, that fits on just nicely, comes up to the front, up to the back. So the next thing I'm going to do is make it so that this will fasten to that. And I would use 3 holes, one near the front and a couple towards the back. You of course can use as many as you would like. So we have some 1/4 inch holes to drill. One. Two. 3. Then we're going to take that out. I'll put the appropriate size tapping drill in. Put this exactly as we want it to be. In fact, I think I'll even just put a little clamp on that. As I say, this stuff is slightly slippery, so we'll put it at this end because we won't accidentally cover over a hole. Alright, get ourselves placed exactly where we want to be. Looks quite nice. Turn it over. Mark our holes. Now three, and now we can tap because it taps easily because it's not hard, but as I say, it is dense enough to take a thread. I use a coarse thread for this. Same theory as studs going into aluminium, and softer material you want nice deep threads with quite thick walls. take those little bits off there. We're supposed to be doing a proper job. Or you could use a little countersinking or deburring tool. But when it's only thin sheet, I like to just file them off. Alright, that goes through there. As I say, this stuff threads very nicely. There you go, bolted on. So our next thing is to cut the foam and do some upholstering. So we'll get set up and do that. Now we can use the base we've cut to mark out the foam. I just noticed, by the way, that I had a look at some of the film I'd shot, and when I was trying to show you the bronzing, mostly all I showed you was the top of my hat. But never mind, can't have everything, can we? Okay, now we're going to cut this out using a Stanley knife. You can use any good sharp knife, it cuts really nicely. Use a little sort of sawing motion. I generally do it in 2 passes. Remember, when you're using something wide like a felt tip pen, sharp, even a Sharpie, that for this you need to be cutting on the inside of the line, because that's where the pen was up against the shape you're trying to make. So there we go around once.
Not quite all the way through. Just a fraction on the other side. And out it comes. And as you can see, it cuts quite nicely. So there we go. It's all full. So the next thing is to cut out our leather cloth. Or vinyl. This we're just going to draw freehand because we want a good, obviously you want the thickness of that, plus being able to overlap everywhere. So you need, you know, fair distance around. In fact, in this instance we need 2.5 inches. So, get our scissors. Then we're going to put that down. That down. And then we'll start to do our covering like so. Now, some people like to start at the ends. I actually like to start at the sides. So. One in there. Nice and tight. Now don't go too near where you're going to curve, because you're going to have to start pulling that in. should form a little flat. And then what we're going to do here is get this to fit without having too many little rooks in it. So you're going to be constantly pulling it away from the curve. Some of these we'll be able to work out. Every now and again I find I have to take a staple out and just pull it slightly differently, or I do end up with a too big a rock in it. If, by the way, there are any upholsterers watching, I'd be most grateful for any hints and tips that they may have. This is always the difficult bit. There you can see our seat more or less ready. As I say, the foam gives nicely, but it springs back and it won't just collapse. So I'm going to keep working to get this a little bit better, and then we will bolt it to our seat pan, and there you go. Now I have it trimmed up and looking a lot better all the way around. You also cut out the little darts so that it's not too thick. And then we get our 3 bolts. And the hole. This will pull down pretty flat. As you can see, there's no great big gaps. And there we have our saddle, and this is polished up. It'll look really nice. So let's pop it on the bike, and that'll be it for the day. There it goes. Nice tight fit. Don't want it rattling around. One in there. One on the other side, and there we have somewhere to rest your bum between sections. Eat your heart out, modern trouser riders. All finished there. Next two episodes will be the rear wheel and the front wheel. We have some spaces and things to make up there, and the dummy mounting for the larger spindle. And when I do the back wheel, I'm going to talk about a few things to do with chain line and centering the wheel, which will be useful for you no matter what sort of special you're building. So, as I said, remember to look at Dave Richards' Old Time Steam Shop. Remember to look at Otter BSA, and please send me some comments to see if we can fine tune what you want to see in the videos. Till next time, bye now.